Alright, this video, let's take a look at graphing the tangent function. Alright, so some guidelines that we go by is we find and sketch two adjacent asymptotes. We divide the interval into four equal parts, plot the points, and then sketch the graph. And the first thing we have to know is, let's just look at the basic graph of y equals tangent x. Alright, so tangent x has vertical asymptotes at negative pi over 2 and pi over 2. Okay, these are the two adjacent asymptotes here. And then it's divided up into four equal parts. See, here's 1, 2, 3, 4. The negative pi over 4, 0, and pi over 4. So what we're going to do is we're going to graph, and we're going to find the asymptotes, break it up into four equal parts, and then for the tangent function, at the first point, or at the negative pi over 4, tangent is going to be negative 1. At the next one, it's going to be 0, and then the next is going to be positive 1. So it's negative 1, 0, 1. And that's the main thing, is finding these and the two adjacent asymptotes. And then you just sketch the graph in. Alright, so let's take a look at a problem. Well, first let me say this. To find the two adjacent asymptotes, what you do is whatever this is, whether it's x, x plus pi over 2, 2x, whatever you're taking the tangent of, to find your two vertical asymptotes, you're going to set that equal to, that should be a negative, to negative pi over 2 and pi over 2. Okay? Alright, so just remember that. We set this equal to negative pi over 2 and pi over 2 and solve for x. Alright, so let's take a look at an example. We got 4 examples to do. Alright, so we want to graph it over one period, so we just over one cycle. Alright, so we have the 2x, so we're going to take 2x, set it equal to negative, we're going to set it equal to negative pi over 2, and we're going to take the 2x and set it equal to pi over 2. And when we solve here, we will multiply by a half, and so that's going to give us x equals negative pi over 4. And same thing here, we're going to multiply by a half, and so that's going to give us x equals pi over 4. Alright, so now we can draw this, and I've got my vertical asymptotes at negative pi over 4 and pi over 4. That's my two adjacent asymptotes. Alright, now let's break this up into four equal parts. So first thing, I'm going to find the midpoint between the negative pi over 4 and the pi over 4. Well, that's pretty easy. That's just 0. Okay. Next, I'm going to find the midpoint between 0 and pi over 4. So halfway between there would be pi over 8. And then halfway between here would be negative pi over 8. So those midpoints were pretty easy to find. Okay, and you should know how to do that. Alright, so now remember that we've got 1 and negative 1. So remember when we looked at the graph here of tangent x, at the first one it starts out at negative 1, then it goes to 0, then it goes to positive 1. So that's the same thing we're going to do here. It's going to be at negative 1, 0, positive 1. And then we sketch the graph. Alright. Alright, so that's the graph of that one. And these, as we go, they're going to get more difficult. So I would recommend watching the whole video, and it's going to hit everything you'll come across also. Just about everything. Alright, so how about this one? We got y equals -3 tangent 1/2 x. Alright, so I'm going to take the 1/2 x, set it equal to -pi/2, and I'm going to take the 1/2 x and set it equal to pi/2. Solving for x, multiply by 2, so I get x equals -pi. Same thing here, multiply by 2, I get x equals pi. Alright, so let's draw it. So I've got -pi, pi, that's my two adjacent asymptotes. Okay, and now I'll break this up into 4 equal parts. So halfway between -pi and pi is 0. And then halfway between 0 and pi is pi/2. Halfway between 0 and -pi is -pi/2. Alright, now remember from this one it goes to 1 and -1 for these points. Well, that's because there's a 1 in front here. But if you notice over here, we have a, don't worry about the negative right now, but there's a 3. So it's going to go up to 3 and down to -3. Okay, that right there is going to determine these values, the number in front. Okay, alright, so now let's get ready to plot our points and sketch it. Alright, so remember for this one, it starts out here at -3, but there's a negative in front. So instead of starting out at negative, it's going to start out at +3. And then it goes to 0. And then remember on the next one, normally it would start up here at positive, but since there's a negative in front, it comes down here to negative. And so this graph, well, I didn't draw it very good, but see if I can do that again. So something like that. Okay, and so there's the graph. Alright, let's take a look at another one. Alright, so here we go. Alright, so I'm going to take the x minus pi/3, okay, whatever you're taking the tangent of, and we're going to set it equal to -pi/2, and x equal, and x minus pi/3 is equal to +pi/2. Alright, so here I'm going to add pi/3 to both sides, on both of them. So I get x equals, and so that's going to be, let's see, that's 6, so 2 minus 3, that would be -pi/6, and x equals, and then that should be what, 5pi/6. Okay. Alright, so there's my two adjacent asymptotes. Now let's look at this. Alright, so I'm not going to draw this. See how I got the y-axis? I'm going to erase that for now because I need to be sure where to put it, because one of my points is over here -pi/6 and the other one's 5pi/6. So, you know, how close do I need to put the -pi/6 to this line? How close does the 5pi/6 need to be to this line? Well, we don't know. So what we'll do is we'll just go ahead and mark the pi over 6, and we'll mark the 5 pi over 6. There's our asymptotes. Okay, and let's break this up and then we'll put the y-axis in. Alright, so I need the midpoint between these two. Okay, so the other ones, they were easy to find the midpoint. So to find the midpoint, all we do is we take the negative pi over 6 plus 5 pi over 6. See, whatever we're looking to find the midpoint between, we just add them together and then half it. So this is going to be 4 pi over 6, which is 2 pi over 3, okay, if we reduce it. And then I take the 2 pi over 3 and I have to half it, so I multiply by half, and that's going to be pi over 3. So the midpoint here is pi over 3. And now I need the midpoint between pi over 3 and 5 pi over 6. So I have pi over 3 plus 5 pi over 6, and that's going to be 7 pi over 6. Okay, and so then I take the 7 pi over 6 and I half it, and that's going to give me 7 pi over 12. So the midpoint here is 7 pi over 12. And now I need the midpoint here. So that's going to be negative pi over 6 plus pi over 3. And that is going to be, what is that, pi over 6. And then I take the pi over 6 and I half it. And that's going to be pi over 12. So this would be pi over 12. And so we can see the y-axis is going to be about right in here. Okay, something like that. Alright, now I plot my points. Okay, so what's the highest and lowest number? Well, we look in front, so it's going to be 2 and negative 2. Okay, so remember at the first point, let me put the negative 2 over here. So at the first point, remember it starts out at negative, then it goes to 0, and then it goes to the positive. And so my graph would look something like that. Okay, and let me say this, the graphs are going to look better if you use graphing paper, so these marks are evenly spaced. Okay, so just to let you know that. Alright, so there's that one. Now let's take a look at another one. This will be the last one. Alright, so whatever I'm taking the tangent of, okay, I'm going to set it equal to negative pi over 2 and pi over 2. So x minus pi over 4 equals negative pi over 2, and x minus pi over 4 equals pi over 2. So I'm going to add pi over 4 to both sides. And so that's going to give me x equals, and let's see, that's going to be what? That's going to be negative pi over 4, and then I'm going to add pi over 4 to both sides here, and that's going to give me x equals, let's see, what was that, 3 pi over 4. So there's my two adjacent asymptotes. So let's look at this. And once again, I'm not going to put the y-axis because I've got one negative, one positive. So I've got negative pi over 4, and I've got 3 pi over 4. So I need the midpoint, and I'm not going to go through showing the work on this one. I did it on the I showed it on the last one, so if you need to see that again, you can rewind the video. All we're doing is adding the 2 and then halving it. So this is going to be 2 pi over 4, so that midpoint is going to be pi over 4. And this would be, okay, there you go. There's 0, so there's my y-axis. Okay, and then the midpoint here is going to be 4 pi. That's going to be pi over 2. All right. All right, so let's look at this. All right, so I know we've got a -2 out here. But first, let's just look at y equals negative tangent x minus pi over 4. Don't even worry about the -2 right now. Okay, so looking at this, I've got, this is going to be what? -1 and +1. So I've got my -1 and I've got the +1. Okay, now remember, tangent starts out, okay, here's the first x value, and then here's the next one, there's the next one. So tangent normally starts out at negative, then it goes to 0, then it goes to the positive. All right, but since there's a negative here, okay, since there's a negative, that means it's going to start up here at the +1. Okay, so typically, so I would start up here at the +1. But look at this. We have -2. So I'm starting up here. See, all I'm doing right now is looking at this thing. Okay, so this is going to start me up here, and then I have to subtract 2. So I'm going to come down 1, 2. So it's going to start here. Okay, then it goes to 0. Okay, see this right here? It goes to 0. But then I have to do what? Subtract 2. So I've got to come down 1, and let's go ahead and put a -2 here. So I'm going to come down 2. Okay. Then when I come to this one, it normally starts here, but since I have the negative, it's going to start at -1. Okay. But then I have to subtract 2. So that's going to be 1, and then I'm going to need one more. So it comes down -2. And then you can sketch your graph in. Okay? Alright, so hopefully that wasn't too confusing. Let me show you another way that you can do that might not be as bad. Let's see if I can erase that dot. Yep. Alright, so another way you can look at it is, you see the y equals negative tangent x minus pi over 4. Just look at that. So tangent normally starts here, but since it's a negative, it would be here. Okay, then it goes to 0, and then it goes to positive, but since I have a negative, that's going to put it at -1. Okay, so that's the points just for this. Well, now we can go look at this, and that says, okay, well, I need to drop each point 2 units. That's there, so we drop down 2. And then you have your graph like that. So you can just go ahead and plot the points for that, and then drop it whatever that is. And if that was plus, then you would raise them to 2 units. Okay, and then you can always go back and you can erase these points here. So that's another way you can do it. So don't let that right there throw you off. I mean, just look at just look at this, plot your points, and then say, okay, I either need to move it up or down. In this case, we had to move each point down 2 units. Alright, so I hope that helped. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Check out my other videos. Alright, thanks.